The party reeked of peonies mixed with the cloying sweetness of sugared smoke, and the room echoed in that way that happens when money shouts louder than voices. I leaned against the edge of the terrace, my hands deep in the pockets of a thrift store blazer. The lining whispered against my skin with every tiny movement. I'd picked the blazer for its simplicity, its ability to hold me together, straight seams, good, solid fabric, and no fancy label to impress or embarrass anyone. My daughter, on the other hand, had chosen something else entirely. Ava shimmered in satin, radiant as a bell you could practically ring with a compliment. The chandelier above her head exploded into 1,000 tiny fragments of light, which danced across her cheekbones, across the new diamond bracelet her in-laws had loaned her for the evening. She looked at me the way a showroom looks at a garage. "Mom," she said, already smiling at someone else over my shoulder. "You made it." "I said I would," I replied. She gave the air beside my cheek a quick kiss, then let her gaze slide down my lapel, across my waist, to the generous curves I carry at 52. Her eyes flicked over to a pair of women near the bar. Their mouths curved into knowing smiles. Ava's did too. "You could have dressed up a little," she said, her tone light. "It's a Hale party." "I dressed for the person who matters," I said. "Who's that?" she asked. "Me." The band on the mezzanine launched into the second verse of a Motown classic, and people pretended they still remembered how to dance. Servers weaved through the crowd with trays piled high with champagne coupes, tiny bowls of lobster and citrus, and delicate macaron towers. Apparently, there had been some sort of florist crisis, threatening to cancel the decorative arch just 30 minutes before the guests arrived. I'd slipped into the kitchen and quietly paid the penalty myself, because the florist looked like she'd burst into tears if anyone raised their voice, and the manager wore the hunted expression of a man about to be fired for someone else's mistake. I used a credit card that didn't have my name on it. Cirrus Holdings. It's just easier that way. People see what they expect to see. Across the room, Jason, my new son-in-law, kept glancing nervously at the terrace doors, as if he could somehow conjure up a breeze of fresh air and a dose of courage. He's a good kid, with the broad shoulders of a man who's used to carrying the weight of other people's decisions. His father, Richard, wore his tuxedo with the casual confidence of a man who knew he belonged. You didn't need to be told he ran a fund. Your spine just straightened up a little in his presence. "Ellie," Richard said, managing to find me without appearing to be looking. He extended his hand, palm warm, his grip firm, like he'd already purchased something from me. "We didn't get a proper hello." "We just did," I said, shaking his hand. "May I say," he continued, "that we're delighted truly to welcome you into the family." "Families don't have a front desk," I said. "You don't check in and out." He laughed, not because he found it funny, but because he hated not being the one to dictate the pauses in the conversation. His eyes flicked over to the bar, then to the florist, now posing under her miraculously resurrected arch for a grateful selfie, and finally to the black card I had tucked back into my pocket after the manager insisted on bringing me the receipt in person to thank me twice. The card had glinted for a moment when I moved. Richard filed that information away. "To new beginnings," he said, raising a coupe that seemed to materialize in his hand. "And to Ava and Jason, health, happiness, and compounding returns." "Only 2 of those belong in a toast," I said, but I clinked glasses with him anyway. You can feel a room shift when a program is about to begin. Chairs grow teeth, and the crowd develops a collective spine that swivels toward the microphone. A cousin with a podcast voice grabbed the mic and called Ava and Jason to the center of the floor. People clapped, phones went up, and diamonds sparkled. Ava took the mic. Her nails were tiny mirrors. "We just want to say," she began, "how incredibly thankful we are to everyone who made tonight possible. To the Hales, Dad." She turned to Richard. "You went above and beyond." A wave of polite laughter rippled through the room. "And to Jason's mom, of course. And to my mom." Her eyes found me with the precision of a camera lens. My body remembers her first steps, the first time she tried to tie a ribbon and wouldn't give up. It remembers the night I had $38 and a bag of carrots and told a toddler we were having sweet orange coins for dinner. It remembers when we slept on the floor of an apartment with no light fixtures, just bare bulbs. In this moment though, it doesn't seem to remember how to breathe. My mom taught me thrift, Ava said. The room chuckled because thrift is a punchline in rooms where money has been ironed flat. She used to say, "We don't need nice things, we need good things." Her voice grew sweeter, almost saccharine. "But Mom," she turned the mic slightly so her words could slide on the surface of people's teeth. "Sometimes good things are nicer when they fit." Laughter, quickly suppressed, like a dog pretending it doesn't bark in front of company. She lifted her chin in my direction, a playful kind of meanness in her eyes. "Look at you, Mom. Still you. Still solid." Her fingertips sketched a circle in the air, as if she were tracing a planet around my waist. "At least you're reliable." "Careful," murmured a woman standing near her. Ava brightened like a bulb twisted too tight. "Anyway," she trilled, and leaned into the words she'd rehearsed with someone who didn't love her enough to stop her. "To the Hales, thank you for showing me what elegance looks like. To Jason, thank you for loving me as I am. And to my mom, thank you for being a rock, even if sometimes that rock is." She laughed and the room braced itself. "Kind of a fat pig. Phones don't gasp, but people do." The sound had two distinct notes, delight and then fear. I heard the second note linger longer. The band lost the bridge. A server froze with a tray above shoulder height, the glasses chiming together softly, like they were whispering an alibi. Jason's face went white, then flushed red with apologies that hadn't yet formed. "AVA," he said under the mic, but the word was amplified by the speakers anyway. "What the hell?" "She knows I'm kidding," Ava said. "We're close." She was smiling like someone falling backward into a pool they had been assured was shallow. I took a step forward and then back. 52 years old, and my mother is dead and would have said, "Eleanor, breathe." The floor seemed to tilt, and I had the small, embarrassing thought that I hoped my shoes wouldn't squeak if I left. I breathed. I kept my hands in my pockets because I didn't trust them not to fly. Richard moved like a curtain in a breeze. There and then just air where he'd been. He unclipped the mic from Ava's hand with a practiced charm that made it look like he was doing her a favor. "Let's give the bride a break," he said, and laughter came obediently. "We all say things we don't mean when we're overwhelmed." Ava laughed along, relieved. But her relief wouldn't last. Because Richard had already seen the thing he needed to see. Because I had already placed the florist receipt in my pocket, and the manager had already whispered, "Thank you, Ms. Whitaker." Cyrus approved instantly, and Richard had filed Cyrus away in the smooth drawer where he keeps leverage. He could smell a balance sheet inside a body the way sharks smell iron in water. His eyes moved through me, beyond me, to the black card and the polite holdings, after a word that could mean clouds or altitudes or fog if you were careless. His mind made a net. The rest of the toast was just noise. People love to clap when they've done something ugly. It seems to make the blood circulate better. I stood still and let the sound wash over my blazer until the last polite whoop died away, and the band, mercifully, found the bridge. I didn't leave. Leaving would have been too kind. I found a thin-stemmed glass of water and watched my daughter accept kisses like praise could fill the empty pocket where kindness should go. Jason caught my eye. He started toward me, then stopped when someone gripped his sleeve, then started again. When he reached me, he didn't say, "I'm sorry." He said, "Are you okay?" There are two kinds of sorry. The one that centers the person who speaks, and the one that makes room for the other person. Jason's question made room. I nodded. "I've been worse." "When?" he asked, perplexed. "Once," I said. "There was a winter without heat, and someone at the shelter told me to be grateful for breath. They were right, but I thought about hitting them anyway." He huffed out a sound that was not quite a laugh. "She shouldn't have said that." "She did," I said. "And she meant it." He pressed his lips together. "I'll talk to her." "No," I said, and he blinked. "You'll listen to her. Then talk to yourself." Behind us, Richard had begun a slow orbit, collecting the important men and letting the less important believe their proximity meant something. He visited the bar and said something confidential to the bartender, who nodded toward the kitchen like everybody's secrets lived there. I watched the shape of the evening crystallize around what would happen next. A hand extended smooth, a peace offering pressed like a signature. It didn't take long. "Ellie," he said, reappearing with 2 coffees in porcelain cups as if he were a friend who remembered what warmth feels like in the hand. "A word?" "Outside, where the air isn't rented." I followed him to the terrace. Below us, a courtyard pool reflected the chandelier like a fallen star that had decided to stay. The night air smelled like jasmine mixed with some designer's idea of cedar. In the glass wall our reflections stood side by side. His tidy wealth, my thrift. He gestured toward a chair. I remained standing. "You paid the florist," he said, admiring my reflection's refusal to sit as if it were a painting he'd commissioned. "Very generous." "I paid a woman who would have lost her job," I said. "Very generous," he repeated, but he meant something else entirely. "The check cleared quickly," he said, watching the pool. "Cyrus, that's a what do they call it, family office?" "Sometimes they call it mind your business," I said. His smile widened. "I like you." "I believe you," I said. "You like money that comes wrapped in principles. It's your favorite trick to make them unwrap each other." He leaned against the railing. "We both protect what we love. I protect my son even from himself. And from burdens of history. You protect your daughter from need. I respect that." He took a sip of his coffee. "And I suspect your protection has grown substantial. People think wealth is a neon sign. The best kind is a fog. I let the fog thicken. I run a fund," he said, as if that sentence were a handshake you could frame. "We rescue undervalued assets. I couldn't help but think of you when a situation crossed my desk today. A short bridge. Very safe. Very short. Good yield. And it would be a graceful way to heal what happened in there." He tilted his head toward the ballroom, where my name had been used like a napkin. "You're offering me a chance to buy my daughter's dignity back," I said. "I'm offering you a seat at a table where dignity is priced in basis points," he said cheerfully. "We both know that table. Better to choose the terms, no?" "The terms," I repeated, tasting the word like a seed. "What are yours?" He named a number that wouldn't even make me blink. Then he named collateral that would. "Nursing homes. The ones no one visits. The ones governments forget." He dressed the asset in phrases, distressed, repositioning, synergy, that people use when they don't want to sit in a hallway and smell bleach and loneliness. "You launder something with the wrinkle resistance of misery," I said. He waved a dismissive hand. "We're improving outcomes. It's not charity. Charity is such theater. It's capital with conscience." "Whose?" I asked. His smile barely flickered. "If you're not comfortable, of course. I'm sure Cyrus prefers clouds to ceilings." I finished my coffee. It was good. "I'll think about it," I said. "Tonight," he said. "We move at dawn. You don't sleep." "I nap on planes." "I sleep like the poor," I said. "Hard and honest." He laughed again, and this time there was a brittle edge to it. "Good night, Ellie." When he disappeared back into the party, Jason stepped out from behind a stone column, where he had given us privacy and accidentally overheard every word. His face was pale in the light from the pool. "He does that," he said softly. "He makes it sound like he's saving you." "Is he?" "No." Jason swallowed hard. "He's saving himself. And if someone drowns and their pockets are full of stones when he's done, he says, they should have learned to float." We stood there in the jasmine and the cedar and the echo of a Motown song that had finally remembered how to end. Somewhere inside, Ava laughed and the sound was bright as glass. I imagined the child version of her, cheeks sticky with orange coins, sleeping under a window that wouldn't close all the way. I imagined the woman version, wearing a bracelet heavy with other people's promises. I imagined all the versions in between that I had failed to meet exactly where they were. "Are you going to take it?" Jason asked. "No," I said. "What are you going to do?" "Something else," I said, and felt the old machinery click back into place. The one I had built out of hunger and second-hand screws. I'm going to buy the storm. Is that a metaphor? He asked, helpless, hopeful. Always, I said. And sometimes it's just paperwork. I left the terrace to find Marisol in my phone, which is where she lives at 10:13 p.m. On a Saturday when I need your eyes on a nursing home debt ladder. Cirrus upstream? I saw Tessa's last message, a meme about spreadsheets as love languages, and typed you awake? 3 dots appeared and then vanished, and then appeared again. Always. She wrote back. Mom. Ava's voice cut through the air. She stood a few feet away, her bracelet winking like it had something important to contribute. You were supposed to leave, she said, as if she were gently herding a guest toward the coat check. I didn't. Her mouth twisted into a pretty shape. You embarrassed me. I stood still, I said. You did the rest. She glanced around to see who was watching. Can you, she lowered her voice, not do the martyr thing? We grew up like broke, okay? Everyone knows. But this is different. You're in my world now. I looked at the arch of flowers I'd paid for and the chandelier reflecting in the pool like a galaxy remembering itself, and my daughter telling me I was in her world now. No, I said gently. This is still my world. I just let you borrow the lights. She opened her mouth to snap back a retort but found none. From inside the ballroom, the cousin boomed something about an after-party at the rooftop bar. People began to peel away in pairs, in clusters, moving in the flock patterns of those who believe gravity is a social construct. Ava caught my sleeve, and for one tiny second her fingers were small again. I didn't mean, she began. You did, I said. I didn't say I love you anyway. Some sentences need to earn their way out. Richard reappeared at her shoulder, his smile as supple as well-worn leather. We were just going to head up, he said. Ava, darling, our table? Ava dropped my sleeve. Coming, she said, and then to me, good night, Mom. I watched them go, the elegant tide carrying her along. Jason hung back, pulled between currents, then chose the one that would hurt him slower. When the terrace was finally mine, I sat down at last, and the chair accepted me without commentary. The city hummed below. Somewhere a siren rehearsed a small grief. I took out the florist's receipt and smoothed it against my knee. Paid Cirrus Holdings. Numbers lined up like soldiers. I turned the paper over and wrote on the back in tiny letters the first move and the second. Then I drew an arrow in the air only I could see. From an asset marked distress to a line item marked belonging. People think you buy safety. You don't. You rent it nightly and you pay an attention. I have paid attention for decades. I know a storm when I smell iron in water. I know when a party is a trap. I know that being called a pig is less about the body you inhabit and more about the person who needs you to be an animal so they can be a god. I folded the receipt into my pocket, where it met the warm edge of the Cirrus card, and I stood up. Time to go home. Time to sleep like the poor. Time to wake up like the rich. On my way through the ballroom, the florist caught my arm. Her eyes were grateful and enormous. I'll make you something, she whispered. No charge. I shook my head. Charge me, I said, and pay your assistant double this week. She nodded like that was a kind of prayer. At the door, a woman I didn't know murmured, I'm so sorry, and I thought, it's astonishing how many people know the right words after they've listened to the wrong ones. I thanked her anyway. Outside, the night was bigger than the party. It always is. I walked toward my car and the city and the version of myself that doesn't fit anyone's dress code and doesn't need to. In the rearview mirror as I pulled away, the glass pavilion shrank into a jewel you could swallow and choke on. By morning, I would have Tessa's map of the nursing home debt and a note from Marisol that said simply, yes. Upstream. You'll need the state regulator on side. Kendrick. By afternoon, I would call in a favor from a judge who remembered a foreclosure winter as clearly as I did. By evening, Richard would learn that sometimes bridges are traps laid by the person you thought was drowning. But before all of that, I did the most radical thing a woman can do after a room calls her an animal. I slept. Hard and honest. And I dreamed of orange coins, and of a little girl who learned the world could be good even when it wasn't nice. I met Richard at a cafe that looked like old money pretending to be new. Matte black cups, brass railings, a pastry case curated the way some people curate charities. The hostess greeted him by name and mispronounced mine. "Peace," he said, offering his hand. "We had an unfortunate night. I'd hate for it to metastasize." "Unfortunate nights don't metastasize," I said. "People do." He smiled like I told him an inside joke about human nature. We took a corner table. The window framed a city that never apologizes. "I was rash," he began, "pushing a deal at a party. My fault. Here's the simple version. There's a nursing home portfolio, bad management, decent real estate underneath. We step in, we professionalize ops, we improve outcomes. Clean yield. Reputational upside." He pushed a leather folio across the table. Inside, a river of numbers, each one pretending not to know the others. "What happened to the last operators?" I asked. "Eaten by scale," he said. "A kindness in this market." "Residents died," I said. "Did the kindness reach them?" A fractional pause. "We're not undertakers, Ellie. But you are very good at funerals," I said. He laughed as if to say, "You're fun," and if I weren't who I am, I might have believed that was a compliment. "Jason told me he admires you," he said, as if parenthetical affection were currency. "I admire you too. You move like a professional. Quiet, decisive, averse to theater. Partner with me and the noise around Ava evaporates. People forgive within earshot of power." "I don't buy absolution wholesale," I said. "You do when it's cheaper," he said gently. "We all do." The coffee arrived. He drank like the cup owed him interest. I read the term sheet while my pulse wound down to its working speed. The hooks were elegant. Covenants that loitered until triggered, cross defaults that could yoke unrelated assets, an arbitration venue that was, by coincidence, chaired by one of his old prep school companions. "Short bridge," I said. "Long leash. Only for people who run," he said. "And if they walk?" "They trip," he said, smiling. "But someone's there to catch them." I shut the folio. "No." He nodded like a doctor who enjoys telling you there was never a chance. "At least let me make the apology, my son, and your daughter won't." He slid an envelope across the table. "Spa weekend. Your name on the bungalow. Take a friend." The envelope was heavy. People like him never give apologies you can't weigh. "I already have a friend," I said, pushing the envelope back. "She can read." He leaned in. "I can be an enemy who leaves you alone," he said. "Or I can be an enemy with hobbies." "I have a hobby too," I said. "I take things away from men who confuse intimidation with inevitability." His eyes cooled. He rose, buttoned his jacket, and rested 2 fingers on the folio. "You'll be back when you see what I see," he said, picking it up. "Because you and I." He gave me the smile he gives mirrors. "We count the weather, not the raindrops." After he left, I texted Tess. "Pull public records on Hales plus River Skies Care LLC plus state inspectors reports last 5 years. Map debt ladder." She replied with a gif of a raccoon washing grapes. Translation on it. Jason called. "Dad said you were prickly." I said no. "I'll handle Ava," he added quickly as if I'd asked. "I'm sorry about the party." "Handle yourself," I said. "Then go be near her." Quietly. When I stepped outside, the air had that post-rain clarity that makes even bad decisions look sharp. I bought a bag of oranges from a street cart and peeled one while walking. Money lets people rewrite the weather. It doesn't change how fruit tastes. By nightfall, Kendrick had texted. "Tip line agrees River Skies runs hot. Send me bones, I'll add meat." And Tess at 1:11 a.m. Found upstream debt. Not River Skies. Their lender's lender. Your playground. I slept with the calm of someone who knew the storm's shape and had put buckets under the right leaks. Monday began with fluorescent light and a clerk who hated the sound of her keyboard. County records are cathedrals for people like me. Every drawer is a hymn. Tess slid into the chair beside me with 2 coffees and a grin like a paper cut. 2 stacks, she said, tapping the screen. River Skies owes to Barrow Healthcare credit. Barrow's warehouse line sits with Norrell Capital. Norrell securitized the line and left a sliver on the table for friends. Guess who? She turned the monitor. Hales. Not Richard directly. He's too careful. But a trust registered to an address we both knew had never been visited by a human soul. The trick is here, Tess said, bringing up a servicing agreement. If we buy a slice of Norrell's senior note through a proxy and then trigger audit rights, by say expressing concern over patient outcomes affecting revenue streams, we can reach into River Skies without touching Hales, I finished. And we get to own the rhetoric care quality as collateral integrity. Tess beamed. Is that a thing you just said? It is now. We made 3 calls. 1 to a boutique that specializes in ugly slivers of debt. 1 to a regulator Kendrick's friend plays pickleball with. 1 to Marisol. Don't get righteous, Marisol said, voice cool as steel. Get precise. If you spook the herd, Richard will stampede you. I don't spook, I said. I whistle. Then whistle into this, she said, sending over a draft demand letter that sang in a key only lawyers and men like Richard can hear. At noon Ava posted a reel. She had a ring light's understanding of forgiveness. My mom is like the strongest woman I know, she said, face glowing. We have our jokes. We're just a real family. The comments did not treat her kindly. A clip from the party leaked. The word pig traveled fast. Like any word with more appetite than meaning. She texted me. This is your fault. You didn't laugh. Now everyone thinks I'm a monster. I typed you can be better than a comment section and deleted it. I typed take it down, apologize like a human and deleted it. I typed nothing. Jason called instead. Dad leveraged our condo, he said. He said it was paperwork. It's collateral for a line of his I don't understand. Bring the documents, I said. Marisol will translate. At 3 Kendrick sent a draft. A thread that didn't name Hales but might as well have. A smell of iron rose in the air. By 5, the boutique confirmed they could tuck a wafer-thin slice of Norrell's senior note into a clean entity we'd owned since before Ava's braces. By 6, Marisol had buttoned our demand to the last hole. At 7, I stood in my kitchen squeezing oranges by hand, the kind of prayer you can drink. Richard called at 7:12. You made a move, he said, voice pleasant like an early frost. I paid attention, I said. Return the slice, he said. You don't want what comes next. I do, I said. I want light. He chuckled. Light reveals dust. You'll look dirty too. I've slept on floors, I said. Dust and I are on speaking terms. A pause long enough to fit a threat. You're risking your daughter's marriage, he said finally. I'm risking my daughter's future, I said, and hung up before he could mistake the difference. Jason's hand shook when he handed Marisol the copy of the condo docs. She laid the stack down like a patient on a table and opened the first page. Cross-collateralization, she said, half to herself. Consent buried in a signature pack. Automatic consent by failure to object within 5 business days after notice sent by courier, of course, and signed for by concierge. Not you. Jason rubbed his eyes. He said it was a family portfolio management thing. I didn't want to look ignorant. You weren't ignorant, Marisol said. You were groomed. He blinked hard at the word. A lot of men need permission to call harm by its adult name. Can we undo it? We can unwind if we prove lack of informed consent, she said. But we'll need to embarrass him. I've wanted to do that since I was 12, he said, trying on humor like a suit that doesn't yet fit. My phone buzzed. Ava again. They're canceling my brand deal. Can you call them? Explain I'm not whatever they think I am? I can't help with your image, I typed. I can help with your mirror. Therapy tomorrow. I'll pay for the first 12. After that, you will. Scene. No reply. By afternoon, the boutique executed our purchase of the note sliver. We became, in the most technical, boring, powerful way, part owner of Richard's Weather. Tess filed our audit notice with a tone only machines can reproduce. This is routine. This is normal. Please hand over your throat. Richard didn't roar. He did something worse. He invited me to dinner. The restaurant was glass on 3 sides, water on the 4th. You could see the city as a diagram of appetite. You're not wrong, he said, first course barely down. There are bad actors in elder care. I am not one of them. Not being the worst is a poor defense, I said. You think you invented moral debt, he said, amused. You're not the only one who grew up hard. I never said I was, I said. But I'm the only one at this table who remembers what a space heater sounds like when it hiccups. He took a sip, considered whether vulnerability served him tonight, placed it back on the table. This audit annoys me, he said. It also threatens good people. Pull it back, and I'll get your son-in-law out of those cross calls. Unwind quietly. No one gets bruised. It was a good offer. It was also a trap. Accept and I'm implicated in silence. Refuse and I become the story he tells about unreasonable women who destroy value because feelings. 2 conditions, I said. First, independent patient advocate oversight for river skies with teeth. Second, Jason is unwound in writing tomorrow by noon. He tilted his head. You think I train on your timetable, he said. Noon is cute. I think you're bleeding in ways you can't show, I said. Noon is merciful. He leaned back, smiled to the glass so the room could see how gracious he was being to a difficult woman. Noon, he said. Bring me a draft. When he left, he touched my shoulder. Felt like a stamp. I went home and wrote the draft with Marisol over speaker. Tess fed us data while Kendrick pinged. 2 families want to talk about river skies. Quietly. The storm had found its barometer. At 11:47 a.m. The next day an email arrived. Re-unwind Jason Hale with a PDF attached, and an attorney CC'd who spelled my name correctly. I read it twice. Clean. A text from Jason followed. Thank you. Then, for him or for me? For you I wrote. And for the man you're trying to be. At 12:03 p.m. River Skies Council acknowledged the patient advocate oversight framework like someone chewing a new word. At 12:14 Richard called. Are you satisfied? He asked. No, I said. But I'm interested. That's all capital needs, he said. Interest. What he didn't say. He'd had to move fast because the audit rights we triggered had triggered others. His lenders were sniffing. Our sliver had become a lever. Ava posted a story. A boomerang of cocktails. Caption. New chapter with a heart. Comments knives. I put my phone face down and chopped carrots into coins. The map lived on my dining table for 3 days. Printout, string, names, arrows that looked like a conspiracy theorist crime wall until you noticed everything pointed in straight lines to registered agents, SEC filings, union complaints, and a doctor with a license to certify anything for the right price. Meet Dr. Thacker, Tess said, tapping a headshot where the smile had the wrong wattage. He clears patients for transfer in record time. Records are imaginative. Marisol marked a circle around his name. If we show a pattern, regulators will do the rest. Kendrick arrived with eyes that had eaten too much screen. 2 families on the record, off for now, he said. Photos of call buttons no one answered. 1 invoice for a comfort kit that included a blanket priced like a heritage goat. He dropped a folder. Also a whistleblower. Middle management. Wants immunity. Hates the word whistleblower. Call them a witness, I said. People like it better when their courage sounds like a job. While we worked, Ava texted nothing and Jason sent small updates like weather reports. She started therapy. She hates her therapist. She went back. She painted a door at the studio you gave her. It's a terrible color. She loves it. At dusk on the 3rd day, I took Soup to the shelter where the orange coins winter lives in my bones. I know the women at the front desk and the person who fixes the clogged sink with grace. We ate and I remembered the way hunger makes sound, and how money is quiet until it wants to be seen. On the way home my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. At home I listened. Ms. Whitaker, a woman's voice said, steady and tired. My mother was at River Skies. I've been told you're making noise. If you're real, I'll talk. If you're theater, don't call me back. I called her back. I'm real, I said. And I don't do theater. Good, she said. Because I have scenes no one clapped for. We met the next morning. She brought a folder with the same weight as grief. Inside photos, billing records, a handwritten list of names. She tapped one. That nurse quit, she said. She'll talk. She cried when she gave me Mom's things in a trash bag. Said she was sorry. I told her to be brave instead. I thanked her the only way that matters, with time. We sat until her coffee went cold and her throat didn't. Back at my table, Tess traced a new line from Dr. Thacker to a pharmacy that had learned how to upcode sleep. Marisol drafted a letter that sounded like a lullaby until you read the footnotes. Kendrick scheduled a call with the state investigator, whose pickleball partner had turned out to be a decent person with an indecent boss. Richard texted that afternoon. I'm hearing footsteps. You're doing. No, I wrote. Your history. He called. You're making a mess, he said. I'm cleaning, I said. You won't win, he said, almost gentle. You'll just be a cautionary tale other men use when they explain why they keep their wives indoors. I'm not indoors, I said. And my cautionary tale ends with a better building code. That line play well in your head? He asked, amused. Careful, Ellie. You're not immune to narrative. No one is, I said. But I've learned to buy my edits early. I hung up and stared at the map, at the way lines become nets if you knot them. Ava's name wasn't on the table. It wasn't anywhere. That felt correct and wrong at the same time. That night, Jason knocked on my door with takeout and a face that wanted permission to hope. She asked me what the word atonement means, he said. I said I didn't know, and she laughed like I'd told a joke. Make dinner with her, I said. Make it ugly and edible. That's where atonement lives. He nodded. What do you need from me? Don't let your father turn you into an errand boy for his shame, I said. When he sends you to deliver bad news, return it unopened. We ate from cartons and watched the map glow in the lamplight like an X-ray of a broken system setting itself. At 10, Kendrick texted. Thread goes live Friday. Soft at first. Pressure later. At midnight, the unknown number called again. The nurse. She spoke in a whisper that made me check my windows. I can't stop seeing their faces, she said. Tell me how to make it count. We'll put you in a room with someone who writes laws, I said. Then in a room with someone who enforces them. And the room with the man who made it happen? You'll never have to see him, I said. But he'll feel you. Silence. Then. Good. I lay in bed and felt the storm tighten. Not around me but around the space where Richard had left his exits. The map on the table didn't look like vengeance. It looked like infrastructure. Between sleep and morning, I dreamed of a red dress I didn't own yet, hanging in a closet that didn't care what size I was. I dreamed of a party that wasn't a trap. I dreamed of Ava, older, asking questions with an open face. When the sun came up, the first email of the day was from River Skies Council. Audit scope, clarifications dressed like civility and smelling like sweat. The second was from Marisol. Judge Carver will sit in on depots. The third was from Ava. I booked another therapy session. Don't make a big deal. I didn't. I just put the oranges in a bowl and went back to the table, to the threads, to the needles, to the work you do when parties turn you into inventory and your answer is to rewrite the ledger in a language men like Richard can read. Numbers and consequences, cross defaults and clean light. The storm was moving. I had bought my piece of it. Now I would decide who got wet. Richard's mask is charm, but even masks crack when money sweats. The River Skies audit moved faster than he anticipated. Regulators asked for logs he hadn't falsified yet. He invited me to his office. Polished glass, framed degrees, an aquarium full of fish that cost more than rent. He paced while spinning a pen. I'll be honest, he said. We're stretched thin. A short-term bridge loan from Cirrus would stabilize everything. 30 days. Friendly rate. You'll even earn a board seat if you want one. It sounded like honey. I tasted the vinegar. You'll sign terms that grant me audit rights across any entity touching these homes, I said. He blinked too slow. That's heavy-handed. No, I said. That's hygiene. He signed because cornered men often believe they can slip the collar later. He didn't see that the ink was a lock. That night, Tess texted. His quarterly filings are Swiss cheese. We can walk right in. Jason texted too. He told me you're dangerous. I wrote back, he's right. Just not in the way he thinks. Audit rights opened boxes Richard hoped would stay shut. Tess uncovered forged valuations. Kendrick ran parallel checks. Numbers on paper that didn't match reality on the ground. Jason confronted his father after seeing one too many temporary transfers siphoning money through shells. Richard's voice thundered down the phone line. You don't embarrass me with outsiders. Jason looked more ashamed than angry when he told me. He said I don't understand capital. You understand truth, I said. That's rarer. Meanwhile, Ava's influencer brand deals collapsed. The clip of her calling me a pig had gone viral with the caption, "Rich girls eat their mothers for dessert." She messaged me late at night. Please fix this. Everyone hates me. I wanted to answer with softness. Instead I typed, the only fix is accountability. Start there. Jason came to me one evening hollow-eyed and asked how I built Cirrus. I told him the truth, sitting at my kitchen table with peeling oranges between us. When the bank took my first house, I started buying others. Ugly houses, forgotten ones. I fixed them and rented them cheap to people no one else wanted. Over time, those little bricks stacked into towers. Logistics software was luck and obsession. I saw a hole, I filled it. Cirrus is the umbrella I built to stop the rain hitting the people who can't fight back. He listened, shame twisting his face. I never knew. Ava never said. She never asked, I said gently. You did. That matters. He nodded. I want to do better than him. Then start by not becoming him, I said. Kendrick published the first soft exposé thread. No names, only facts. Regulators sniffed. Activists shared. Patients' families reached out. Richard scrambled. He offered Ava a partnership with a glamorous influencer to rebuild her reputation. The influencer, Tess discovered, was a fixer on Richard's payroll. A bribe with lipstick. Ava accepted, blind to the strings. Jason tried to warn her, but she snapped. At least Dad believes in me. Mom never does. Jason told me. I kept my face steady, but inside something cracked. She's choosing theater, I said quietly. Let her. Truth doesn't need an audience, it makes its own. The gala was in a glass pavilion above the river. Chandeliers glittering like ice. Richard orchestrated everything. Donors, politicians, his arm around Ava, who looked brittle in her satin smile. I wore black, simple, unremarkable except for the check I carried. When the bidding began, I raised my hand and pledged more than any Hale had that night. The crowd gasped. The money went into a fund for patient advocacy, with mandatory transparency clauses for every board member who sat on it. Richard froze, applause lighting the glass walls around him like a cage. He couldn't refuse without outing himself. He clapped, teeth tight. Jason met my eyes across the room, and for the first time he smiled. Not the smile of a man chained, but of one who saw a door opening. I left before dessert. Money had spoken, but tonight it spoke my language. The ink on my pledge had barely dried before the first domino tipped. Our audit letter, combined with Kendrick's thread, spooked Richard's secondary lenders. Within a week, 2 lines of credit froze. By the second week, a major investor began whispering about clawbacks. Richard invited me for an urgent chat. His eyes were wolf-bright. You've proved your point, he said. Call off the dogs. I'll make Ava whole, money, brands, everything. I'm not after Ava's brands, I said. I'm after your ghosts. His jaw twitched. You don't want me desperate, Eleanor. Desperate men don't calculate, they burn. I smiled. Then light the match. I already own the water. Behind his fury, I saw something he'd never admit, fear. That night Ava knocked on my door, mascara streaking, demanding, "Can't you just help me? They're tearing me apart online. Help how? I asked. A staged apology? A PR firm? Yes, she screamed. Why not? Because none of that teaches you who you are, I said. Her tears hardened into anger. She stormed out. The door rattled when it slammed. The next morning, I left an envelope at Ava's studio door. Inside a key, a small operating budget, and a note, 12 therapy sessions prepaid. The studio is yours. If you stay out of Richard's orbit, use it or don't. Choice is power. Jason told me she picked up the envelope, scoffed, then returned with paint under her nails. She painted the door puke green. He laughed. But she hasn't stopped working since. Richard meanwhile scrambled. The oversight committee we'd forced onto River Skies demanded records. He couldn't fabricate fast enough. His silence grew expensive. At a board meeting, he tried to spin numbers into gold. Tess slipped me a text under the table. 3 subsidiaries cooked. He can't cover. I leaned back and let him sweat. The mask was slipping and the room could smell it. Marisol sat across from Richard like a surgeon prepping a scalpel. Mr. Hale, she began. Explain this discrepancy between projected occupancy and actual patient census. Richard leaned on charm. Forecasting is never exact. Except, Marisol interrupted. When your emails say pad census by 12% for optics. His smile froze. Tess had built a timeline too tight for him to wiggle free. Every false valuation, every ghost patient, every forged invoice stacked like bricks in a wall he could no longer scale. Judge Carver in the gallery watched with the detached interest of someone who'd seen this play before and knew the ending. After the session, Jason found me outside the courthouse. I've never seen him rattled, he whispered. He always wins. Even kings die, I said. Jason moved out of the Hale condo. 1 month, he told Ava. I need to breathe. She didn't fight him. She just whispered, don't leave forever. She kept going to therapy, resentful at first, then curious. Jason told me she'd started sketching again. I, meanwhile, cooked dinner at the shelter one evening. One of the kids asked, are you famous? I laughed. Not the kind that matters. Richard Corner tried to smear me. Old photos of me in thrift clothes manipulated headlines about Cirrus. Kendrick dismantled it live, tracing every false story back to a Hale vendor. For the first time, the tide turned. Public sentiment stopped laughing at fat pig memes and started asking, who's really dirty here? Richard doubled down. He hired a firm that specialized in pressure. Anonymous calls, veiled threats, even a leak that my wealth came from shady sources. But Cirrus is clean by design. Every dollar I've ever made has receipts. Marisol slammed his attempts into the ground with surgical precision. Then came the call that changed everything. Ms. Whitaker, the nurse whispered. I'm ready to testify. With her voice and the whistleblower manager Kendrick had nurtured, we had ammunition enough to ignite a wildfire. That night, Jason sat across my kitchen table, looking exhausted but lighter. She asked me what the word atonement means, he said. I didn't know how to answer. Cook dinner with her, I said. Messy, ugly, edible. That's what atonement tastes like. He nodded. And you? What does atonement mean for you? I looked at the audit maps glowing in lamplight. It means I finish what I start. The order came down quietly. Seizure of Richard's flagship fund assets, followed by the yacht that bore his name more proudly than his family did. He stormed into my path outside the courthouse, rage coiled like a spring. You've destroyed me, he hissed. No, I said calmly. You destroyed yourself. I just turned on the lights. Every attempt to escape bled into walls I'd built months before. Audit clauses, oversight boards, liens disguised as kindness. His exits closed one by one. For the first time, Richard Hale looked like a man who knew the water was deeper than he could swim. Ava came to me one night with the studio key clenched in her fist. I don't deserve this, she said. Then return it, I answered. She pressed it into my palm, then pulled out a notebook. Inside was a rough, imperfect but hers business plan. Art therapy for underprivileged teens. Budget scrawled in ink. I don't want you to fix it, she said. I want you to negotiate with me. I nodded. Then sit down. We'll go line by line. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't absolution. But it was respect. And that was more dangerous to Richard than any audit. Richard's last weapon was family. He tried to coerce Jason into signing a false confession that would shield him and ruin me. Jason refused. I'm not your errand boy anymore. Richard cornered him in the condo garage, voice low, threats sharp. What he didn't know. Jason had already wired me. The recorder hummed. We handed it to Marisol. The whistleblower laws covered the rest. Within a week, regulators had the call, and Richard's allies began to defect. The empire wasn't bleeding anymore. It was hemorrhaging. Judge Carver presided. Richard's empire was on trial, but so was the echo of that party. Ava took the stand. She tried to start with charm, then faltered. Her throat caught on the word. I called my mother a fat pig, she admitted, voice breaking. And I let people laugh. But the truth is, she's the strongest woman I know. And I was cruel because I wanted to belong in a room that didn't matter. The courtroom held its breath. Carver ruled. Sanctions, restitution, oversight. River Sky's funds redirected into a victim's trust seated by Cirrus. Richard fined, disgraced, tethered to a probation he couldn't buy out of. I didn't smile. Justice is not a party trick. It's a ledger. 1 year later, the city glowed under lantern light. A benefit gala, but this time I walked in by choice, not invitation. I wore a simple red dress. Not designer, not borrowed, but mine. Fit because it didn't need to. Ava stood beside me, healthier, softer at the edges, stronger in the middle. She introduced me with steady pride. This is my mother, the bravest woman I know. Jason raised a glass and toasted integrity. Richard Hale was there too, shrunken, orbiting shadows no one noticed. He left before dessert, slipping into irrelevance. Later that night, I danced barefoot with shelter kids under. Those ugly little pieces of debt? One was owed to a regulator whose pickleball buddy was none other than my friend, Kendrick. Another was owed to Marisol. Don't get all self-righteous on me, Marisol warned, her voice as cold as steel. Be precise. If you scare the herd, Richard will trample you. I don't scare, I replied. I just whistle. Then whistle into this, she said, forwarding a draft of a demand letter that only lawyers and guys like Richard could understand the true meaning of. Right at noon, Ava decided to drop a reel. She had this ring-light glow of understanding, except it was forgiveness she was aiming for. My mom is like seriously the strongest woman I know, she announced, her face practically radiant. We have our jokes. We're just a normal family, you know? The comments were less than kind. Then a clip from the party was leaked to the public. The word pig spread like wildfire. The way any word with more shock value than actual meaning does. She texted me. This is all your fault. You didn't even laugh. Now everyone thinks I'm a total monster. I started typing, you could try being better than some random comment section. Then I deleted it. I tried again. Take the video down and apologize like a real person. Then deleted that too. Finally, I just typed nothing at all. Jason called instead. Dad used our condo as leverage, he said. He told us it was just paperwork. It's collateral for some line of credit that I don't even understand. Bring me the documents, I instructed. Marisol can translate. Around 3, Kendrick sent a draft of a thread, one that didn't specifically name Hales but might as well have. I could practically smell the iron in the air, like something was about to go down. By 5, the boutique confirmed that we could tuck a tiny sliver of Norrell's senior note into a clean entity that we'd owned since way before Ava even had braces. By 6, Marisol had buttoned up our demand to the very last detail. By 7, I was standing in my kitchen squeezing oranges by hand, the kind of silent prayer you can actually drink. Richard called at exactly 7:12. You've made your move, he stated, his voice as deceptively pleasant as an early frost. I've been paying attention, I replied. Return the slice, he demanded. You really don't want what's coming next. Actually, I do, I said. I want some light to be shed. He chuckled, a low, humorless sound. Light just reveals the dust. You'll look pretty dirty, too. I've slept on floors before, I said. Dust and I? We're on speaking terms. There was a pause long enough to slip in a threat. You're risking your own daughter's marriage, he finally said. I'm risking my daughter's future, I corrected him, and hung up before he could even begin to mistake the difference. Jason's hands were shaking like leaves when he finally handed Marisol the copy of those condo documents. She laid the stack of papers down as if they were a sick patient on an examination table, and flipped to the first page. Cross-collateralization, she muttered, almost to herself. Consent buried in all this signature stuff. Here we go. Automatic consent by not objecting within, let's see, 5 business days after getting notice, sent by courier of course, and signed for by the concierge. Not you. Jason rubbed his tired eyes. He said it was just some family portfolio management thing. I didn't want to seem like I didn't know what was going on. You weren't ignorant, Marisol said. You were played. He blinked hard at that word. It's like a lot of guys need to get permission to call harm what it really is, an adult name for an adult problem. Can we undo this? He asked. We can unwind this whole mess if we can prove a lack of informed consent, she explained. But we're gonna have to embarrass him to do it. I've wanted to do that since I was 12, he replied, trying on humor like an ill-fitting suit. My phone buzzed again. It was Ava again. They're canceling my brand deal. Can you call them? Explain that I'm not whatever they all think I am? I typed, I can't really help you with your image right now, but I can help you with your own self-reflection. Therapy tomorrow. I'll pay for the first 12 sessions. After that, you're on your own. Scene. That was it, no reply. By the afternoon, the boutique had finished executing our purchase of that note sliver. We officially became, in the most technical, boring, and yet seriously powerful way, part owners of Richard's entire financial situation. Tess then filed our audit notice using a tone that only machines can actually replicate. She basically said, "This is just routine. Nothing to see here. Now please hand over your entire throat for inspection." Richard didn't exactly roar though. He did something that might be even worse. He invited me out to dinner. The restaurant was this glass box on 3 sides, with a waterfront view on the 4th. You could see the entire city spread out like some diagram of everyone's desires. You're not wrong, he began, barely downing his first course. There are definitely some bad players in the elder care industry. But I am not one of them, okay? Well, not being the absolute worst isn't exactly a great defense, I pointed out. You think you somehow invented the concept of moral debt, he said with amusement. You're not the only one who had a tough childhood, you know. I never said I was, I replied. But I'm probably the only one sitting at this table who still remembers what a space heater sounds like when it cuts out. He took a sip of his drink, considering whether or not being vulnerable would actually serve him tonight, and then carefully placed the glass back on the table. This audit, it's annoying, he said. It also threatens some really good people. Just pull it back, and I'll get your son-in-law out from under those cross-collateralizations. We can unwind everything quietly. Nobody gets hurt. It was actually a pretty good offer, but it was also a total trap. If I accepted, I'd be implicated in his silence. But if I refused, then I just become the story he tells about unreasonable women who destroy value just because of their feelings. I have 2 conditions, I stated. First, independent patient advocate oversight for River Skies, and it has to have teeth. Second, Jason is completely unwound in writing by noon tomorrow. He tilted his head ever so slightly. You think I operate on your little schedule, he said. Noon is kinda cute. I think you're bleeding in ways that you can't even show, I replied. Noon is actually being merciful. He leaned back in his chair, flashed a smile to the glass so that everyone in the restaurant could see just how gracious he was being to such a difficult woman. Noon then, he said. Just bring me a draft of the agreement. When he left, he made sure to touch my shoulder. Felt a lot like a brand. I went back home and started writing that draft with Marisol on speakerphone. Tess was feeding us data nonstop while Kendrick kept pinging, saying that there were 2 different families who wanted to talk about river skies. But quietly, the storm had finally found its barometer. At exactly 11:47 a.m. The very next day I received an email with the subject line "Run Wine Jason Hale," and it had a PDF attached. An attorney was CC'd, and they even spelled my name right. I read it over twice just to make sure. It was clean, all right. Then, a text came in from Jason that simply said, "Thank you." And then another, "Was that for him or for me?" "For you," I texted back. "And for the man that you are trying to become." At 12:03 p.m. River Skies Council sent over an acknowledgement of the Patient Advocate Oversight Framework, like it was some new terrible word they had just learned. At 12:14 Richard called. "Are you satisfied now?" he asked. "Not yet," I replied. "But I am definitely interested." "Well, that's all capital needs, really," he said. "Just interest." What he didn't say was that he had to move fast. The audit rights that we triggered had also triggered others. His lenders were already sniffing around. Our tiny sliver had become a lever. Ava then posted a story, just a boomerang of cocktails. The caption read, "New chapter," with a heart emoji. The comments were nothing but knives. I put my phone face down and started chopping carrots into perfect little coins. That map of everything stayed right on my dining table for a full 3 days. It was covered in printouts, string, names, and arrows that made it look like some conspiracy theorist crime wall, until you realized that everything actually pointed in a straight line to registered agents, SEC filings, union complaints, and a certain doctor with a license to certify anything for the right price. "Meet Dr. Thacker," Tess said, as she tapped a headshot where his smile looked just a little off. "He clears patients for transfer in record time. And his records, they're imaginative to say the least." Marisol drew a circle around his name. "If we can just show a pattern here, the regulators will take care of the rest." Kendrick then arrived, his eyes looking like they had just eaten way too much screen time. "We've got 2 families on the record well off for now," he said. "Photos of call buttons that nobody ever answered. And 1 invoice for a comfort kit that had a blanket that was priced like some kind of rare heritage goat." He dropped a folder onto the table. "Oh, and also a whistleblower. Middle management type. Wants immunity. Hates being called a whistleblower though. Then let's call them a witness." Paper lanterns hung in the air, and the sound of people laughing was louder than any stock market report you could imagine. I thought back to the initial insult that had kicked everything off and how I managed to shrug it off, though it did make me more determined. I remembered having to make do with cheap meals, and how going hungry actually made me stronger. I'd always been discreet about my wealth, keeping it under wraps. But wearing that red dress, standing in that glow, it wasn't something I could hide anymore. It was essential, like oxygen. And for the first time I truly felt like I could breathe.